In this lecture, we'll look at one of the really nice features of Tableau dashboards called Actions. Actions allow you to set up rules whereby when the user clicks or hovers on a dashboard element, an event is triggered, or in Tableau speak, an action happens, which affects one or more of the other elements in the dashboard. For example, clicking on a state on a map can filter the entire dashboard to only display data for the clicked state. Another example is when a user clicks on, say, a product name, and a descriptive web page pops up or is launched to give the user more information about that particular product. So therefore, if used correctly and intelligently, Actions can add some really nice interactive features to your dashboard and give the user an immersive experience as they explore and interact with the data in your dashboard. Now, a word of warning with the Actions. Similarly to what we were saying about having too much information or too many visualizations crammed into a single dashboard, having too many actions can also cause a dashboard to be not very user-friendly, and it can cause confusion with the users. So do not overload the dashboard with actions just because you can. Think about what actions are actually achieving and what are the goals of particular actions and implement them accordingly. So let's have a closer look using the dashboard we put together in the previous lecture. To create an action, there's a couple of different ways. The easiest way is to navigate to the dashboard tab and then click on the dashboard menu and go down to actions. This is where you create different actions for this particular dashboard, and you do that by clicking on Add Action. And as you can see here, there are actually 3 different action types as of this version. There might be more in the future, but at the moment we can do filtering, highlighting, and invoking a URL by doing something on a dashboard. So we'll have a look at creating each one of these. So let's add a filter action. So click on a filter and you're presented with the menu where you need to fill in the action details. So with the action, there is a concept of a source sheet and a target sheet. So source is the one sheet where the action is invoked or where action happens, and the target is where the results of those actions are displayed. As a source sheet, we can actually associate a multiple number of sheets to be a source. But let's start with something simple. So we'll use our profit by state sheet as a source, and we'll say anytime we are selecting a data element on this sheet, we'll filter the results based on that selection in our target sheets. So we can leave them all as they are. And we'll also specify that when we clear the selection, we want to show all the values back up on those sheets. So we'll leave that as is. Now down at the bottom, you can actually specify how the filtering happens, whether it's based on all fields that are being used in the query for profit by state or for selected fields. So in here, we can actually say we only want to filter based on state or province field, and anytime, so based on what we've selected, the data set will be filtered coming from this data source. Okay, now our workbook here contains only a single data source, but you can actually have actions across multiple data sources as well. So as long as your data is in the same format and using the same field names and all that sort of stuff. So that's it. So we click on OK, and we've created an action, a filtering action, which says that anytime we click a state, like Texas, the rest of the sheets on the dashboard are actually filtered by that value. So Texas, Florida, California, and this changes the selections of the underlying data in each of these sheets. There's also a quick way of creating a filtering action by using a shortcut that's available for each of the worksheets. You can actually create the action by going to the little caret, invoking a context menu, and selecting Use as Filter option. What this does is actually creates an action behind the scenes, and we can then use that to filter on the rest of the dashboard based on selection within this worksheet. So if I click on labels, it will give me only information about labels in other worksheets. So what Tableau's done behind the scenes is actually created an action. So you can actually go to dashboard and click on actions, and you can see the filter one generated action, which was done through that shortcut. The next type of action we'll look at is the highlight action. So what this does is highlight values on target worksheets based on elements selected on the source worksheets. So for example, if you select a product on a source worksheet, that product will be highlighted in the target worksheet. So to demonstrate that, I actually have a different visualization that I'm going to use. So we have a profit and sales scatter plot. Now this chart shows us a cross-section, a product subcategory of profit and sales. Now the marks are intentionally made quite large so we can actually see the effect of the action, but generally they will be a bit smaller. Now to add highlighting action, again we go to dashboard actions and we'll add action. In this case we'll be using highlight. We'll use percentage of total sales because that chart or that table has product category and subcategory, and that will be our source, and our target will be profit and sales scatter plot. So we'll say let's say we can do a hover this time. We're saying that every time we hover on a particular data element within percentage and total sales worksheet, data will be highlighted in the profit and sales scatter plot, and target highlighting will be based on all fields. Okay, so we created an action. You can see that as I'm highlighting the subcategories, labels, paper, pens and art, supplies, and so forth, the actual marks on the bottom right scatter plot are actually being highlighted. Now, what we can also do is we can actually go to back to the actions, and we can actually say that we want the effect to be across both of those worksheets. So whether it's percentage of total sales or profit and sales scatter plot, the action is actually reciprocal. So what that means is that I can actually go onto scatter plot and highlight things, which will then highlight rows in the table, or I can go in here and that will highlight marks on my scatter plot. Okay, so finally we'll look at the third type of action, which is the URL action. The URL action allows you to launch a web page from your dashboard, which may contain some extra information that the user might need and that's related to your data. So in order to demonstrate that, we'll create a new action, and we'll create a URL type action. So we can give it a name, and for this example, we'll just use profit by state. And what we'll do is we'll actually open up a new page which opens up a wiki. Now this is the URL, a static URL to the Wikipedia. We can test it, which will pop up a browser, open up that address. But we can also actually make the URL dynamic. This means that the URL will be automatically generated or changed based on what the user clicks. So to include data elements in a dynamic URL, we just simply need to enclose them within brackets, or alternatively we can select them from the available fields on the right hand side. So if I choose state of province, this field actually comes directly from the underlying source, which means that if I'm selecting Illinois state, the URL will become enwikipedia.org wiki Illinois. There's a couple other options. You can actually URL encode data values. So if you have special characters that are not allowed in the URL strings, for example, %, or a percentage sign, clicking this box will actually encode them so it's safe for the HTTP protocol. You can specify multiple values. So if you have a multiple selection of, let's say, states or product, they'll be added to the URL. Of course, the actual receiving web server needs to know how to interpret this. So there is flexibility is there, but you really need to know how to use this feature. Going back to these options on hover, select, and menu. If you leave it as a menu, what it means that when I click on Texas, the URL action will not automatically be generated, but it becomes available on the menu here. So I can actually click on the hyperlink and that will take me to the Wikipedia. Alternatively, if you wanted the action to happen automatically, you can specify a different trigger. So for example, a select option would be good. So if I click on California, it launches the Wikipedia page for California straight away. A couple other little things with actions. You can actually specify at the worksheet level, you can specify to ignore actions. So if you don't want a particular worksheet to change based on the other actions, you can do that. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the actions can also be defined at the worksheet level. So if you go to a sheet, under the worksheet, you can also create actions. Now this goes back to the earlier point around having a lot of actions within your workbook. The actions are actually compounded, so if there's a filtering action that's happening at the worksheet level as well as at the dashboard level, you might get some funny results. So just like with anything else, make sure that all your actions are tested, that and that they have a particular purpose and a goal in mind. So again, keep it clear, keep it clean, and keep it simple.